All right. I think we're getting some folks loaded in here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are out there, or if you're watching the recording and it's sometime in the future. Hello, future people. My name is Jeff Fritz. I'm I'm not Burke Holland. You can tell because I've got the hat and I've got a little bit of hair. How you doing there? Where this is another Visual Studio Code live stream. We're broadcasting out to a couple different locations, and we want to welcome you in. We of course have these streams every week talking about all kinds of cool things that you can do with Visual Studio Code. You teaching about new versions of Visual Studio Code as they're being released, so that you can get the most out of our favorite text and code editor. Really great stuff out there. I hope you check it out. There's a complete archive of all of our videos out on the Visual Studio Code YouTube channel. I want you to go check that out so you can learn more about some of the things that have happened, some of the things that are coming up, because we've got a ton of streams planned for you to be able to check out and learn more about Visual Studio Code. I've got a couple guests joining us today, and I want to make sure that you use the chat room. Let us know what's going on, what questions you might have. We have some moderators helping out over there, and at the end of our stream, we'll relay your questions to our speakers, to our presenters, so we can help you get some answers and learn more about Prisma is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about type-safe database access using Prisma, the JavaScript ORM that we can use. Let me bring on our speakers, our friends that are going to be hanging out with us here today. I have Carmen Barent and Alex Roheni joining me. Let me add them in. There's Carmen, and here comes Alex. There we go. Welcome in, friends. Good to see you.
Hello, Jeff. Thank you for having us. My name is Alex Roheni. I was going to start off with a bad joke saying that, hi, I'm Alex, and I'm not good at data structures and algorithm, and then say, oh, shit, that's the wrong audience. But yeah, I'm Alex. I'm a developer advocate at Prisma. But for the summer, I'm a software engineering intern in one of our teams, but that's a story for another day.
Very cool. And Carmen?
Yeah, my name is Carmen. I'm a software engineer, and I built the Prisma Vscode extension.
The Prisma Visual Studio Code extension, you said. Very cool. So we're going to learn more about the extension and how we can get better handle our data interactions in our JavaScript applications then.
Yes, it's actually going to be more than the extension, because also VS Code comes in with type. I think it's the type server that Prisma uses it, and it's useful for inferring types while you're building your application.
Very cool. All right, and Carmen, I understand you're sharing your screen. Let me grab that for us real quick. And the stage is yours.
Awesome. Cool. So we'll start this off by giving a sort of a short and background story from where I started building backend applications. I have a background in front-end development, and that means that when I started building the first backend, or rather full stack application, I had challenges with database access. There were so many libraries out there, and I had no idea what exactly to use, and it was confusing. So last year, during Prisma Day, one of the conferences that we organize over here at Prisma, I stumbled on Prisma 2. It was new, and it was also different, and it was refreshing. The beauty with the Prisma is that it made working with databases feel so simple and intuitive, from the data modeling to running migrations, and also writing the queries and integrating it with the API. To me, felt some sort of like cheating, because I was sort of felt full stack now. But I know there's more. And by the way, this is completely before joining Prisma. So in a summary, it didn't feel different from working with the front-end API, because I got the type safety when I was writing my queries, and they were also validated at compile time. So in short, Prisma is an ORM. It helps you get type-safe database access, and also abstracts you from writing SQL queries. It's made up of 3 components: Prisma Migrate, which I like to think of it like a version control for your database schema; Prisma Client, which is a type-safe query builder; and Prisma Studio, which is a modern database GUI for interacting with your data. And we'll all see how all these play out in short. So let's jump on to the demo now. Carmen is sharing her screen. As we can see, we're going to be using the script example, which from the Prisma examples repository. It's full of examples from your favorite library or framework. But the script example is simple because it has no API integration and it's a bare example. So and if you want an example, if you feel like the library you use for database access, for building your API is not covered, feel free to create an issue or a pull request and we'll get to it. So let's jump on to VS Code. And first of all, let's go through the application. It's as we can see, when we open the file explorer, we have a Prisma folder. The Prisma folder will contain your schema, which will define your connection to the database and where you'll model your data. This is the same place where the migrations will be stored. And if you're using SQLite, you can also set it to be created there. And then inside script.ts, we have a seed script, so to say, that we are going to use when setting up the application, which we will see shortly. And by the way, we are using the Prisma extension, hence why on the schema.prisma file, we get some, which will provide some code completion, auto formatting, syntax highlighting, and help you ensure you remain productive while interacting with the database. And by the way, I should mention that the schema.prisma file is like the heart of Prisma. With it, you use to create migrations, you use it to create the Prisma client, and it will be used by Prisma Studio to open the GUI. So the next thing that we're going to do is create a migration, and we will accomplish this when we open the terminal. I think I have access to it. If you could open it, kindly come in. Should be open. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see. So the first thing that will run is npx prisma, if I can type correctly, migrate dev. So we will also it's a migration that you can use in development, sort of evolving a schema, and then we'll give it a name, name, and we'll call this init. So what this command will do is that since we don't have a database and we're using SQLite for the sake of simplicity, it will go ahead and create the database, create a schema, migration, and also apply this migration against the database. The last thing that it will do, it will generate some types that we will will be used inside the script.ts file. So once I hit enter, as we can see, and boom. And in the Prisma folder, we'll see that a dev.db has been created, and there's a migrations folder that also contains just SQL showing what was done which is just creating the tables. After this, we'll run npm run dev to see the database, and it's just the contents that are inside script.ts that will be run. So npm run dev to see the database. And we can see, well, we should improve the logging here, but we can see that the records have been created. And lastly, we'll open Studio, which I have been raving about as well. So npx prisma studio. I hope I'm spelling that right. Nope, I did not. So npx prisma studio. And as we can see, Studio provides you with a UI that you can create records, delete records, update them, and do as you wish. Give the name, and we can save, and then boom, it's saved. I think for the name, for you to actually add a record, you have to click outside the form, and then before you save it. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So after that, Carmen, take it away with the Prisma client.
Yeah, so I will show you the Prisma schema at first. So the Prisma schema language is in general very intuitive and easy to understand. And if you've worked with GraphQL before, you will be familiar with the general syntax because it's inspired from the GraphQL SDL because it's just so easy and simple. So let's go through all these blocks. So we have the data source block, and that defines how Prisma will connect to your database. So we have the database provider, which is in our case, we will just use SQLite. And we have the URL pointing to your database. Then we have the generator block, which determines the assets created when you run Prisma generate. And Prisma generate, as Alex mentioned before, is used for generating database types that enforce type safety when you're writing your database queries, which we will do later on. We also have model blocks, so we have 2 of those here. And they represent the entities of your application domain. So ultimately, a model maps to a table on your database. And in general, a field has a name. So for example, here, and it has a field type. So in our case, this is just a string. But there can be lots of different types. So for example, integer, string, Boolean, there are lots of more. And also we have this question mark operator. So that means that this field name is optional. The other ones are by default required. And then there's also these square brackets, which just means that this is an array field. So we have multiple posts. What else? We have attribute functions. So here, for example, we have auto increment, which means we have our primary key is ID, and it's an automatically incrementing integer. So let's walk through the actual models. I will just start with a very simple relation. So I will create a one-to-one relation. So let's say we have a user, and one user always has one profile, or optionally has one profile. So that means I will add this question mark here, and then I can just use this quick fix and create this new model since it does not exist yet. So I will create a primary key for this by using the auto increment attribute function that I've told you before. So in order to actually complete this one-to-one relation, I need to have a user specified here. And now we actually define the relation. So here I have a field from my current model, which I need to create. So in here, I can just use the user ID. And then in references, I pick a field from the corresponding model. So from the user model, I will just use the ID field here. So now we have a one-to-one relation. Apart from that, we also have a one-to-many relation already. So from user to post, a user can have multiple posts. And this is specified by this array field here, and also by the relation attribute, which is defined here. So here's the same thing. We have the field from our current model, offer ID, and the field from the user model. So let's just add the third kind of relation, which is a many-to-many relation. So we could have another model. Let's name this category. Again, it's a primary key, the ID field. And now I want to have multiple posts, can have multiple categories. So here we have the post field in an array form. And I actually need to add that to my post model. So here I will have categories and category. All right. And just in case you have such a huge schema that you don't know where the model actually is defined, you can always jump back to it. And you can also let's say you have a really nice comment here, and you want to see what that comment is later on, you can always just hover over and you will see it right there. But let's start with the schema now. We have it defined. Let's format it really quickly so that looks really nice. And now we can switch to the script file and actually write some queries. All right. Yeah, so I see Alex has already removed the queries that were there before. So now we can start off on a clean slate, and I will let him do the talking and I will implement some queries now.
Okay. Since we also haven't run a migration, we can also see that we created a profile, right? So if we delete the post bit, I think you won't get the profile at all. We only got what was initially there, I think. So for it to be actually applied to the database, we need to run another migration, and we can say, let me stop the, we can stop it. Let me clear it, and let's run a migration, and same as before, npx Prisma migrate dev -name, and let's give it add profile and location where you'd like these types to be stored inside the prisma.schema file. So yeah, so I see that Carmen has also created a query, and it's to create a post. We've also added the console.dir. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but the console.dir is just a fancy way of prettifying your queries. And inside this query, we are creating a title, and we are also connecting an author who already exists. So in this case, from our schema, we also saw that a post has a title. And if we try to maybe make a typo from here and maybe remove the E in title, we'll also see that Prisma will throw an error saying that that field does not exist. And that means you can hopefully never make a mistake when you're creating your queries that access to the database. And now we can also see that categories has also been added to a post, which was also not there. So yeah, so now that Carmen has done this, let's now run the script, and it's npm run dev. And awesome, and we can see the data that is returned, which should also be available in Studio, but we can check that towards the end. The next thing is, let's try and find many, all the posts. And as we would expect, run npm run dev again script. We can see that it returns all the posts from the database, and it's as just a one-liner. And if we want to sort of do a join and get the authors, we have an include property inside the find many, and here we'll specify authors to be also returned here. Then run npm run dev again, and boom, we have an author field. Awesome. Yes. What other queries do we have left that we could run? Let's try and create a profile now. So let's create a profile, and as you can see, still the type safety that are picked up by the language, the JavaScript language server. And let's give it a user. I think is it connect? Should be another object again, and the email, and it goes by, you can only connect by a unique property, by the way. And then run npm run dev. Boom. Awesome. So the last thing that we'll also show is how to select specific fields, and the Prisma client offers the select property, whereby you can specify the fields that you'd like returned from a specific model. So let's select, for example, just the title, and I think let's select the name only. Yeah. and you'll say true. Then okay, run the query again.
Oh, I have to save it first. Sorry.
Cool. And we only have the fields returned. Awesome. I think that's the demo. So if you'd like to learn more or play around with Prisma, we have the docs which is available on prisma.io/docs. And we have really worked hard on it. And therefore, we'd also appreciate your feedback. And for now, that will be all for our demo.
Oh man. Okay. There's a lot for me to sink my teeth into there, because I'm a C# developer. I mean heck, I'm C# Fritz. So I'm used to working with ORMs like Entity Framework and using LINQ, and some of the syntax that you showed there. For me as a C# developer, I'm really comfortable with. That's the kind of thing that I'm used to seeing and working with. And when I get into JavaScript and I think through, I got to learn how to do map and reduce and all these things, it really feels like the Prisma ORM gets me to a framework that I'm really comfortable with. Are there intentions to bring some more of that LINQ-like syntax that I'm familiar with? I don't know if it's inspired by LINQ, but is there intentions to bring more of those types of capabilities here?
I'm not so sure about the LINQ capabilities. I haven't interacted with C#, but we do plan on, in the roadmap, hopefully in time, expanding to other languages, whether it's Python. We also have a Go client, but it's in early access, and hopefully we can get it to other languages as well. Yeah, and by the way, fun fact, you can also integrate it with an existing application. We have a command that will introspect your existing database and also generate a schema for you. So you don't really have to create a schema from scratch.
And yeah, 6 degrees of freedom here in the Twitch chat room. Let me put up it. They asked, I think that's exactly the type of answer that they're looking for, a database first approach. I've already got a database, an existing application, and you'll reverse engineer and generate the schema from it.
Yes, with the Prisma CLI, we have the NPX Prisma DB pool. It was renamed from Introspect, so it should be able to work with the existing database. But you might make minor updates, for example, the triggers for updated at columns only, but it should work.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, something that I've been tinkering with recently, and I struggle to work with in an ORM, is the concept of computed columns, right? Maybe you're attaching and you're interacting with a view, or you have a table that has a default value configured in it, right? And I'm thinking MySQL, SQL Server, these databases have that type of capability. Can Prisma handle and work with those pre-computed columns for us?
Do you mean by pre-computed the default values?
Right. You can set it to have a default value that is right. Maybe it's a sales tax calculation that's being done inside the database to return the value for that column. Something simple like that.
I can't speak to that, but we can set default values. For example, when you're making a migration and you're probably going to break that table, you can set a default value for an empty string, for example, but I don't think we can do pre-computed stuff right now.
Okay.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I didn't see, are there abilities to use some of the aggregate functions like sum and max and min when I'm working with extracting values from the database?
Yes, it's completely available. I think if we go back to the code, it should be available in the Prisma client. So let's say we're trying to do user dot should be aggregate. Yeah, there is the aggregate field.
Okay.
And yeah,
I see count there also.
Yes, and then we also have some nice documentation where you could, that will show you how exactly to do it. Yeah, you don't even have to go to the Prisma documentation.
I love this type of plugin with Visual Studio Code and being able to get right in, and you don't need to go to the documentation. But when I want to click through and more, I really appreciate that your team has put the hyperlink there in the embedded documentation that pops up. Honestly, the more that I can stay hands on keyboard and I'm not going and fiddling with searching on my favorite search engine, this makes interactions for everybody a lot easier. There's another question coming in from the chat room asking about interacting with database views. So if we're scaffolding from a database, can I point at a view, right? That shim that sits on top of one or more tables. Can I interact with a view using Prisma?
I'll be honest, I am also not so experienced with databases. I also haven't yet understood what database views are, but at the moment, I'm not so sure it's currently possible. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll defer that. Take a look further at documentation.
Yes.
Your website, localhost 3000, doesn't. You can't on your machine browse to Alex's localhost 3000. It doesn't work like that. I see a question there in the chat room.
On Twitter
and on Twitch is where the question came in. So.
Okay.
This is very cool. And if there's any more questions that we have from the chat room out there, yeah, localhost is only local to your local PC. You can't browse to Alex's local PC or Carmen's local hosts from your machine. Yeah, that's how that works. So, well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you being a part of another Visual Studio Code stream here. And I'm just holding out to see if we have any more questions come in. And honestly, when I think about using these types of tools, using ORM tools with my project, just like you were saying, Alex, you don't have to be a database developer in order to be successful, in order to be productive with these. You're able to focus on your favorite programming language, TypeScript, JavaScript, C#, in my case, Java, whatever it might be, and get productive. Really handy tool set to have. So,
we aim to abstract having to work with the database and just focus on writing your queries that work and push the data to the API or your front end. Yeah.
So, and right, the database providers that Prisma currently supports, I'm assuming some of the big ones are there, MySQL, Postgres. Can you speak a little bit towards the database providers that are supported?
Oh, yes. So we have SQLite, and as you mentioned, Postgres, MySQL, SQL Server, which is also in preview, and also something else we shipped a week ago is MongoDB, which it's also in preview. So yeah, and you don't have to install another NPM package, which is what I was getting frustrated with, to interact with a specific database. All you have to do is go to your schema.prisma file, and then inside the data source, you just change it from, for example, MySQL to Postgres, and that's all. Yeah.
Very cool. Carmen, let me ask you, as an engineer who's been working with and building with Prisma, do you find a preference between JavaScript, TypeScript when you're working with the tools?
Honestly, usually I prefer TypeScript, since having typed fields just makes everything so much more easier. But since you can have that even in JavaScript where you don't have typed, I think it doesn't really make a difference what you use, because it just helps you so much. Even having JavaScript and still having those types, I think makes a huge difference.
And I've been feeling that with TypeScript also. I want to move more and more of my JavaScript coding over to TypeScript, so I get that check ahead of time. And whether I'm working with a library like Prisma or I'm working with something like React or Angular, having that ahead of time, that sanity check. Yeah, you can write in JavaScript. Absolutely, you can do that. But having that sanity check ahead of time, and having an editor being able to give you some feedback, whether it's Visual Studio Code or it's some other tool, huge benefit to us as engineers. All right, very cool. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. Let me go back to just the three of us here. There we go. Thank you so much, Carmen and Alex, for joining us today. Really appreciate you sharing about Prisma here as we talk about Visual Studio Code and some of the great things you can do with it. I hope you have a great day, and we'll have this video archived over on the Visual Studio Code channel for anybody that wants to catch up and review a little bit of what we saw today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
All righty.
Yeah,
and the rest of you out there, hope you have a great day. We'll see you next time. Next week, Burke will be back and we'll have more great content for Visual Studio Code. We'll see you.
Ciao.